Thank you very much, Father Adolf, for the opening prayer. Once again, I take this opportunity to warmly welcome each one of you in your respective capacities. We are at Uganda Pentecostal University, UPU, and our Chancellor of the university, Dr. Maggie Kigozi, is aware that we are here. I am also proud to recognize the presence of the Chairman of Council, UPU, Dr. Nathan Karema. Thank you very much for the stewardship. Thank you for the friendship. Thank you for the perseverance. You are an example of resilience, which is our theme today at this memorial lecture. Resilience in the Rwenzori, building inclusive climate solutions. I also request my team that is being able to register everybody that is here so that we will in due course do our recognition. We want, in terms of institutional presence, to recognize all universities, sister universities that are here. Those particularly in Fort Portal, Mountains of the Moon University. We have Fins International University. Please, if you are around, just wave so that we acknowledge your presence. Thank you so much for the togetherness. We have very many distinguished guests, scholars, people that believe in UPU, the local leadership, the Toro Kingdom, the central government, people from all walks of life, the young generation that needs to take the mantle of climate change into their hands. I don't know what we are going to do with climate change, but I think it needs a digital revolution. The analog generations are probably unable to salvage it. I would like to now invite the someone seen Honorable Alex Ruhunda? I haven't seen him. Before I pass over his program, just a small consultation. Thank you very much. At this juncture, I invite the Executive Director for Accord, Dr. Arthur Benomujisha. Dr. Arthur is also the Vice Chair of the Board of Directors of UPU. We all know his close ties with the late Professor John Ntambirweki. To give us a welcome and an overview of this memorial lecture, and will be followed by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Pelsi Ntambirweki, and we will go on with the rest of our program. I kindly ask the podium, or you would like it in the open here? Okay.
Thank you, Master of Ceremonies, the Chairman of the Council of Uganda Pentecostal University, Dr. Nathan Karima, board members of the Uganda Pentecostal University present, the Vice Chancellor, Professor Prof. Ntambirweki, our keynote speaker this afternoon, Professor Patricia Mbote, distinguished invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. A good afternoon to all of you. It is indeed a good afternoon today to be organizing a memorial lecture in the honor of the late Professor Ntambirweki, whose legacy lives. So Professor Ntambirweki lives through this legacy. Dr. Athabai Nomcha is my name. I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Directors of Uganda Pentecostal University, but I'm also Executive Director of the Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment, ACCOD, which is a public policy think tank based in Kampala, but working in Eastern and Southern Africa sub-region. And we were privileged that the late Professor Ntambirweki was a chairman, a founding chairman, and led the board of directors of our code until he died. And I'm very, very privileged to have served under him. Ladies and gentlemen, this public lecture is organized in partnership between the Uganda Pentecostal University and ACCOD. And therefore, ACCOD is privileged to be part of this legacy to celebrate a giant of Africa. Professor Ntambirweki was a giant in all aspects, a professor of law, but a giant with a giant heart. I was sharing, let me just also revise the protocol and recognize His Excellency Ambassador Donia Ayebade, if you can stand up for recognition. Sorry for that. That is our ambassador, our permanent representative at the United Nations. And I was privileged to have gone to school with him at Makerere University. Yeah, welcome, Ambassador, and I want also to recognize your dear wife. If you can also wave. And thank you for gracing this occasion. Professor Ntambirweki was a great friend of the ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme is very befitting, but let me talk briefly about ACCOD. What is this ACCOD? As I said, we are a public policy research think tank. Our core business in this country is to influence policy making and policy implementation. And we have a vision that we want to make policies work for the people, not only for this country, but for the whole of Africa. We have a big mission to have inclusive, peaceful, and prosperous societies in Africa. For too long, Africa has been seen as an end kind of state of poverty, backwardness, but I stand here to say that Africa is rising, and is rising because for a fact, Africa is now speaking through the voices of its sons and daughters. I think you should applaud that Africa is speaking through the voices of its sons and daughters, because for too long, Africa has spoken through the voices of others. And the professor is here, and the ambassador is here. Africa does not sit on the UN Security Council, even when we have a population of 1.4 billion. We do not sit on the UN Security Council. I don't know why. Maybe the ambassador will have the opportunity to tell us whether he has pushed and things can't move. But Africa must sit on the UN Security Council and make decisions in global governance. But small steps like this one, starting a university that has educated a multitude of people, and especially with a philosophy that actually quality and accessible university education. That's what John Ntambirweki stood for. Quality and accessible university that UP has given and continues to give, and I think that's the legacy that Professor Ntambirweki stands for. We are reminded that most of where he comes from, almost the whole sub-county, most of the people are lawyers. He made law, which is a very expensive course, very affordable. And we have, of course, many lawyers here who can testify that he demystified the law and made it accessible. And we recognize you, Professor Ntambirweki, whom I know. He's on the balcony of heaven now, looking down at us. I also had the opportunity, and I should say that I'm born again, that I had the opportunity to preach to Professor Ntambirweki for a long, long time. And I anointed him many, many, many times. And I know that he's in heaven. He's in heaven. He just changed the location. So, Lord, thank you for giving your son that rest. He's entered the rest, and he's looking down at us. And I want to thank God, even this rain, don't see it in the wrong perspective. Did you see the drizzle? That's a recognition. That's a recognition that Professor is in heaven, and the rain, this is the dew of heaven. I know that, Anthony, you will testify to that. Yes, he called you, said, Anthony, come. You remember? Anthony, come. So Anthony is born again, he's a lawyer who actually studied from this university, one of the eminent lawyers and a relative of the professor. So, ladies and gentlemen, today is not my day, but to acknowledge this giant. This giant should be celebrated at ACCORD. ACCORD has 4 program areas, but one of the most celebrated programs is the program on environment and natural resources governance, which my colleague, Professor Onesimus Mjenyi, who is here as a member of the council, leads at ACCORD. Can you wave for recognition and stand up for recognition? And actually a student of Professor Ntambirweki. We started ACCORD 3 people. Mr. Godbert Mushabe, who is not here, Professor Mjenyi, who is here, and myself. And John was the inspiration for starting that ACCORD. And indeed, ACCORD's program on environment was inspired by John, because these gentlemen were influenced by John to believe in environment. Actually, I was not, because I'm a journalist. I did mass communication, my first degree. These were lawyers, but they had studied environmental law. So he inspired that program, and no wonder it's one of our best programs at ACCORD. And when he came there, he always emphasized, he actually directed the programming of ACCORD. So issues of climate change, today, Professor saw them long ago. He was a far-sighted leader. He saw this coming, and actually, I want to thank God for that, that even that UPU recognizes this and has invited one of the eminent scholars and practitioners, Professor Patricia Mbote, to lead us in this discussion. Let me also disclose that Professor Patricia Mbote, until about 2-3 years ago, was a board member of the Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment. She will be introduced, but she made ACCORD what it is. And I thank God that, Professor, that you find time in your busy schedule to be here to celebrate with us this giant. This giant. So for the young people, I can only say, because I teach, I'm an academic. Beyond serving as an executive director of ACCORD, I've taught at Makerere University many years. I don't know if I have my students here, but they are there. I now teach at Uganda Christian University as a senior lecturer. I teach politics. I'm an expert in peace and conflict studies, and that's what I do. But I'm not recruiting you for Uganda Christian University. This is our university where I happen to be a board chair, a vice board chair, and we are soaring. We have high quality education. It is affordable. I encourage all of you to send the word that this is the place, a center of excellence. Thank you very much for listening to you, and God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arthur. Thank you very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I now call upon the Vice Chancellor, Professor Pelsi Ntambirweki. Prof, you could take the podium. There is a microphone.
Thank you so much, Master of Ceremonies, for this opportunity. I'd like to recognize first, before I speak, my bosses. We have Dr. Arthur Bainomiksha, who has just spoken. He's an assistant vice board chair. And I would please request all the board members to stand and wave so that there are other board members present. Please, nice to see you, Dr. Nathan Karema and your team. Nathan Karema is the chairperson of the UPU Council, and other father is behind, is also a member of the council. Ingura is a member of the council. Those are my bosses, are very many bosses. I'd like to appreciate the UPU team, the reason why this institution and this legacy is still standing. So if please, can you come in the middle here so that they know you and they see you? All the UPU staff, I know you're sitting at the back. Please come in the middle so that you can be seen and appreciated. And please clap for these people. They work so hard as they come. I'll not introduce each one of them, but in there, there are lecturers, heads of departments, deans. Yes, others have remained. And I would particularly like to welcome the team from Kampala as well. Ladies and gentlemen, clap for these people. They are the engine that really manages the UPU affairs, and they put in quite a lot of hard work to make things happen, and they've been behind this lecture as well. Please wave as you go back, and thank you for greeting us. I would like to appreciate very much the team of speakers that we have here, and I don't know whether I'm the one enough to present them to you. I would like to start with Professor Patricia Kameri-Mboti. Please, if you can stand, madam. She flew all the way from Nairobi to be here. We really, really appreciate you, appreciate your time. She's a very, very busy person at the UN, at the United Nations Environment Program. If you're a director of law, you're a very, very busy person. Her CV is deep and wide. She's also a professor of law in her own right. So the lawyers even clap faster, more. She has taught law for over 30 years. And I know that when we want to grow, she promised that she will always be with us. She will hold our hand as we move towards growing the faculty of law to start offering masters and even PhD. Her commitment on gender equality and human rights is demonstrated a lot from her work. If you Google her, you see that she's done a lot of work in environmental law, in governance, in human rights, property rights. We are really, really privileged to have her with us this afternoon. I would like to also introduce our second speaker, Commissioner Margaret Atieno Mwebesa. Please, if you can stand. Atieno is from the Ministry of Water and Natural Resources. She's also a focal person for a Ugandan focal person for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So we can't wait to hear what she has to share with us. She's also a national project coordinator for the investing in forests and protected areas. So the panel we have here is very, 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 very rich, and we really can't wait to listen to them. I'd like to introduce our main researcher, Dr. John Sekajugo. Dr. John Sekajugo is an expert in climate change and disaster risk management. He's a scientist of 10 years experience and he works at the Mountains of the Moon University. I would like also to introduce our young lady, Gloria Namakula, because sometimes we adults tend to talk about alone without consulting the young people. We have somebody who will speak for the young people and for women and how they are affected by climate change. I would like to introduce the last one, a very, very important person, a community activist, Mzee Bidodo Benedict. Come up front here so they see you. He's doing brilliant work in his community, and he'll be able to share with us how he's managing in the community when disaster strikes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like now to thank all of you who have been here, who are here, members from sister universities. At UPU, we value very much partnerships with universities around us. Fins, please, if you can wave. Mountains of the Moon is here. Mbarara University of Science and Technology is here. And we value so much collaboration, and we are looking forward to greater collaboration in future, not only in a lecture like this, but also in research. I would like to warmly welcome the young people who are here. We realized that last year we talked just as adults, and since we are talking about climate change, this time we said, let's have the schools around us also join us, so that this is their world that we are going to hand over to them, so that they take over from us, and also as we help them to protect the world. Before I also speak, I wanted to introduce my family, Mzee Professor John Ntambirweki's family. I know it's raining, but if you can stand, please, for recognition before I speak. Let me start by Brian Ntambirweki. Is the heir of Mzee Ntambirweki. So he flew in also from Nairobi. Brian, thank you so much for coming. Barbara Ntambirweki is the vice heir of, maybe I ran this way, I don't know. Yeah. Sun is not leaking. Barbara, if you can stand. Barbara is the vice heir of Professor Ntambirweki, is right here with us. But we have a very, very important person, Sister Aunt Mary Safari. Aunt Mary Safari is Professor's sister. Thank you so much for coming. Jolie is also Professor's sister. Actually, is here too. Lauben, I think I'll read as and you wave. Jocelyn Mijuka, Simon Mhumsa, Lauben Mugume, just wave so that they know that you are here. Anthony and Jemima, Ian Katundu, very special, he was helping us with blood this afternoon, is also here. Laban Bakunda is also here. Yes, very big representation from the family. Thank you so much for being there. Thank you so much and of course, Bishop Moses Safari, I almost forgot. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming all the way from Mbarara, from Nairobi, from all your corners you have been to be here this afternoon. And I would like, of course, to introduce His Excellency Adonia Ayevale, a very good friend of Professor and your dear wife. Thank you so much for making this lecture all the way from New York. So we are really, really happy to receive you here. And this is what I have to say in a few words. It's with great honor and profound gratitude that I welcome you here. I've welcomed you enough, but this is the second Professor John Ntambirweki Memorial Lecture that was conceived by the National Council, by the Council of Uganda Pentecostal University, that every year before graduation, we should hold a memorial lecture for the professor. Last year, because he spent 20 years in Fort Portal, access to education, we focused the lecture on education, but we knew that we'll go back to the area that he spent a lot of his life on, and that is the area of the environment. So we gather here to honor his legacy as an extraordinary scholar, a mentor, a visionary leader, and of course my husband of 46 years, that whose contribution to academia and society continue to inspire us all. We also celebrate a significant milestone in our university's history, our 20th graduation anniversary, which is tomorrow at graduation. So Professor Ntambirweki's legacy is now 2 decades of shaping minds, of advancing knowledge, of contributing to national development. Today, we are privileged to have a lineup of experts that I've already introduced in the environmental world, and they will be able to share with us their rich, very, very rich experience of how we can tackle the effects of climate change and how we can continue the discourse. So you are very warmly welcome, our panel. A bit of a code, but I'll go through it. I wanted to say that the earth has music for all of us to listen. Those of us who want to listen, listen. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it for our children. That's why this lecture, we emphasized that we should have a lot of young people to listen to what we adults are saying and how we are destroying the environment that they are supposed to inherit from us. This is a proverb that I think is from Native Americans who are saying we borrow the earth for our children. This is a proverb that really highlights our collective responsibility to protect the environment and preserve natural resources for future generations. Our theme for this year is resilience in the Rwenzoris, building inclusive climate solutions. It's both a timely and a very, very urgent message that we have to take seriously. Because here in the Rwenzoris, Rwenzori region is has very breathtaking beauty, very beautiful area of Uganda, maybe the most beautiful, but is also at the front line of climate change impact. We all know that when it rains in Kasese, it is a disaster, the landslides, the rivers, and everybody's affected. I think we shall hear more from people there. We know that in Toroko, I don't know whether it is still underwater, it was under floods for a very long time. So when we were thinking about this lecture, we thought that instead of talking about global and policies, we should also anchor it in the lessons that are near us, the challenges that people are facing, those who are witnessing firsthand the vulnerabilities that threaten the livelihoods of hundreds of people in this region. So the challenge before us, ladies and gentlemen, is not just scientific, but is also social, it's economic, and it's ethical. So we all have to do something about it. Building resilience in the Rwenzori is not a task only for policymakers, like Commissioner Mwebesa, who is here, and her colleagues, but it also reflects on us as the academia, the local community, the innovators, and the development partners, that this is the time to act. It's very sad right now that in the US, everything has been achieved, but they are kind of reversing the agenda, but we hope that one day they will come to their senses and don't destroy the environment anymore. Anyway, at the Uganda Pentecostal University, we recognize the role of higher education institutions must play in addressing the climate crisis. It is one of the things we talk about a lot here, and a bit of research has been done in that area. Our commitment extends beyond research and policy formulation. We are dedicated to join anyone who is fostering practical solutions that empower communities, protect our natural environment, and create sustainable opportunities for future generations, like those ones who are sitting in the 2 tents. An inclusive approach to climate solutions means ensuring that every voice is heard. whether it's a child, a woman, a man, an old woman, a youth, indigenous communities, vulnerable groups. All of us must have to join hands to be at the heart of climate resilience strategies. As we discuss policy interventions this afternoon, traditional ecological knowledge and the lived experiences of those on the front lines of climate change, I invite you to listen carefully, take notes, and see how much of what is shared today we can apply in our day-to-day lives. As we reflect on the legacy of Professor John Ntambirweki, I told you I never called him late. He's living with us, and he's here with us, as been shared before. We recommit ourselves to the ideals that he championed: education, innovation, and social justice. May his vision for a progressive, empowered society continue to guide us as we forge solutions for the challenges of our time. Let us all work together to create a more sustainable future. Every voice counts. Collectively, we have the power to shape our future and create a sustainable world ahead of us. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our duty to ensure that those children of ours who are here and those who are not here, the grandchildren in our homes, and specifically in the Rwenzori region and in Uganda and the whole world, inherit a healthy and thriving world. Thank you so much, and may this lecture inspire you all to concrete action. May God bless you as you listen to these very important lectures. Thank you. James Katarangi, sorry, I didn't mean to miss you, sorry, among the family. Please stand. He's right here. He's also Professor Ntambirweki's son. And anybody I forgot, you will excuse me if I forgot you. And I almost forgot that I have very, very important people here from Rotary. My sisters from Rotary. Please stand up for recognition. This is a Rotary Club of Kabaroli, from which I belong. Thank you so much. Good listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Pelsi Ntambirweki. Thank you very, very much. I would like to recognize the schools here present. We have King of Kings College with their headmaster, Mr. Kwasibwe Frank, as a head teacher. If you are here, can I hear some noise? When I read your name, you say yo, yo, yo. King of Kings College, yo, yo. Westville High School with the head teacher, Madam Jean, yo, yo. Yo, yo. Mr. Wambale, a teacher from St. Paul's Secondary School, yo, yo. Yo-yo, I'm a representative from Chevambe Girls. Yo-yo. Okay. We also have St. Mary Vian Secondary School. Yo-yo, yo-yo, you are very present. Kabarole Adventist Secondary School, are you here? Yo-yo, hey, okay. Thank you very, very much, Professor Pelsi. Those are the young people that you have addressed, and I think your address sets us into motion. And I think with resilience, we really are speaking about the ability to withstand, to adapt, to recover, and to move on. Thank you very much for those welcome remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for our keynote address. Allow me to share with you the bio provided. Professor, I don't know where you will stand, but I think the reins are still here. So ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome Professor Patricia Kemeri Mbote. Professor Mbote is Director, Law Division, United Nations Environment Program. Professor Patricia Kemeri Mbote is an esteemed legal scholar, academic, as well as a law and policy advisor with a distinguished career spanning over 3 decades. She is the director of the Law Division at the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP, where she leads in the field of environmental law, governance, conventions, and related policy issues. She has been a professor of law at Nairobi, at the University of Nairobi. She has been a professor of law at the University of Nairobi, where she has taught for over 30 years and became established as a leading authority on environmental law, governance, and gender. Professor Kemeri Mbote's contributions to academia, both in Africa and globally, are vast and highly regarded. Beyond academia, Professor Kemeri Mbote has been instrumental in shaping environmental governance frameworks, advising governments and international organizations on sustainable development, climate change, biodiversity conservation, and natural resource management. Her commitment to gender equality and human rights is demonstrated through her work on gender and property rights, land law reform, and climate justice. Ladies and gentlemen, join with me to welcome Professor Patricia Kemeri Mbote. Professor.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremonies. And I'd like you to allow me to adopt the protocol that has been laid out before me. Distinguished panelists, guests and participants, it is really an honor for me to be here in beautiful Fort Portal on the occasion of celebrating the life and legacy of my friend and colleague for many years, Professor John Ntambirweki. A man, as many people have said, who was ahead of his time, a true pioneer in modern environmental law with a legacy in Uganda, Africa, and the globe. I'd like to extend my gratitude to the Uganda Pentecostal University for organizing this memorial lecture. I think many times in Africa, we do not honor those of us who have gone before us and who have laid the path for big things. So I'd like to thank the board and also to thank the Vice Chancellor for having organized this occasion. Allow me, in true African fashion, to pay tribute to our dear friend, brother, and colleague. And if I may, Master of Ceremonies, could I request people to stand up for just a minute to honor our colleague, friend, and brother. You may be seated. In Kenya and at the United Nations Environment Program, we met John in the 1990s at the University of Nairobi and at the United Nations Environment Program, where he served at the university as a lecturer, and at UNEP, he was a legal officer. We saw John even then contributing to global environmental processes, including climate change, sustainable development, and promoting effective environmental laws and policies. That is when we met his dear wife, Pelusi, and the children, and with another environmental guru from Africa, the late Professor Charles Okidi, and other faculty. We all became very good lifetime friends and colleagues. In UNEP, John worked closely with Dr. Bondi Ogola, who went on to work for the Climate Change Secretariat, Donald Kaniaru, who occupied the post I have for many years before I joined UNEP, and Halifa Drame from the Gambia, among others. When Uganda started the World Bank-driven National Environment Action Plan process in the late 90s, John was in Uganda. UNEP supported Uganda to prepare environment profiles on various thematic areas, including environmental law. And it was actually John who connected Uganda to UNEP to help the country domesticate international law in the country. It is also imperative for me to say that John led the development of the new generation of framework environmental laws in Africa. And I'm happy to say that most of the African countries now have framework environmental laws. And what we're talking about now is reviewing them. He worked with another Ugandan who also works with me at UNEP, Robert Wabunoha. And Robert Wabunoha would really have wanted to be here. He talks to me a lot about Fort Portal, and because I can bully him, I had told him, you must go with me to Fort Portal. But duty demanded that he stay with his son, who's going to be off school this weekend. And as a mother, I couldn't quarrel with that. At the time Uganda prepared the 1995 constitution, John went in and ensured that that constitution had environmental provisions. And I must say that when Kenya came along the same path 15 years later, we borrowed heavily from the work of John. So Kenya and Uganda must credit John with the environmental laws they have and also the provisions in our constitutions. He was very passionate about water law as well, and I am not surprised because being from Uganda, there is always this discussion about who discovered the Nile. Of course, you know that that is colonial history that tells us other people discovered the Nile. But John was the man who prepared the protocol for sustainable development of the Lake Victoria Basin, and he also informed the work of and the position of Uganda in the Nile Basin discussions, arguing that Uganda wasn't just a downstream state, it was also an upstream state, and therefore it had very many accords on which it could go and argue for the environment. Climate change that John told us about all those years now is no longer a myth. I remember, and I think John was also part of the African delegation that went to Rio de Janeiro in 1992. And in 1992, African countries were arguing that climate change was not their problem. In fact, they were arguing that they had contributed minimally to climate change and they should not be burdened with measures to deal with climate change. That continued for a while, but you see, nature never lies. If we are to say that Africa hasn't suffered from climate change, we would be lying. And in fact, many African economies are almost being crippled by climate change. And climate change doesn't just affect one phenomenon. It coalesces with other factors. It leads to loss of species. It leads to pollution. So we cannot really argue anymore that climate change does not affect Africa. But the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has also told us that Africa, even though minimally contributing to climate change, is one of the continents most affected by climate change. And therefore, climate change is something that we must put our foot on the pedal of. We need adaptation measures. We need to ensure that we adjust our ecological, social, and economic systems to respond to climate change. Because we hear today of fires in California, but we also hear about floods. And even near here, we've had floods recently. If you listen to what's happening in Southern Africa, many villages were washed away by floods. And because many of our countries in Africa are parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, it behoves us to ensure that we put in place measures to domesticate these provisions. And in this regard, again, due to John's foresight, Uganda is one of the 5 countries in Africa that has a climate change law. And that is no mean feat. We still need to deal with financing, and I think we are seeing at the international level our countries putting very spirited efforts to ensure funding flows. At the Baku meeting, the 29th meeting of the Conference of Parties, the funding for climate for Africa was actually raised to 300, I believe, billion dollars, which had been a big problem because it had been at 100 for the longest time, yet it is clear that a lot of money is needed. There are many other instruments dealing with climate, and I think Africa has also not been left behind because we have Agenda 2063. And Agenda 2063 is Africa's blueprint for dealing with the problems that face us, including climate change. We also have common African positions on climate change. Africa is no longer to be ignored in discussions on climate change. And actually, if you don't get Africa with you on an issue, you are likely to fail. And this is thanks to the gallant work of those African sons and daughters who've been influenced by John. We had the Africa Climate Summit Declaration in 2023, and we've had African Ministerial Conference on the Environment also stating what its stand is on adaptation. And the idea is to increase funding for adaptation, and the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Platform puts it very clearly that we have 4 transformational tracks: food security, infrastructure and nature-based solutions, youth entrepreneurship and adaptation jobs, and adaptation finance. I have spoken a lot about John's foresightedness and visionary leadership in environmental law and policy. John, I can say without fear of contradiction, is indisputably one of the people that helped shape modern environmental law. When we went to university, environmental law was not taught. But now, environmental law is everywhere. And this is thanks to people like John. Because once you have strong environmental laws and institutions, you're able to address the problems that come. And you see, John and his colleagues were very forceful in developing these environmental laws that we began to have a problem. Good things can sometimes become a challenge. The challenge of the proliferation of environmental laws and policies led to a crisis of implementation and enforcement. And it was soon being seen that we were not achieving the purposes that we set out to achieve. And again, with nuggets from the work of people like John, a new principle was developed, the environmental rule of law. Environmental rule of law is the application of the traditional rule of law concepts into the area of the environment, where you're talking about enforceability and ensuring inclusion of all. Environmental rule of law has now become a common term. And in fact, at UNEP, we publish a report on the environmental rule of law. We've published 2, a third one is in the work. And had there not been this proliferation of laws, we would not have begun to think about environmental rule of law. The environmental rule of law has borrowed quite a lot from the human rights world. And so the rights-based approach to environmental protection has become a key issue. One of the things that I would be remiss if I didn't mention is that because John got the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment in the Uganda Constitution in 1995, when the United Nations General Assembly passed Resolution 76/300 adopting the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, we couldn't help but say this had already been seen in Africa. And the work of John and others in bringing the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment and the environmental rule of law has led to a lot of cases being brought before courts. So you have cases on climate coming before courts of law because people now have a hook on which to bring this. And I think in Uganda, we have the case in the Bududa landslide case, the Sama William and others against Uganda's Attorney General and others, where the applicants sought damages and compensation from government for loss of life, threats to life, destruction of property due to occurrence of recurring slides. This is but one of the cases that are coming up, and we think that more will be coming. The work that John started at UNEP, other than environmental rule of law, has grown. Technical legal assistance, supporting regional networks, for instance, the Association of Environmental Law Lecturers in African Universities and Association of Environmental Law Lecturers in Middle East and North Africa. These are the spaces where we are growing and vigilantes for the environment from the law space. John's work also, because of being rights-based, is a hub for the work done on women's and children's rights in the area of climate. It is recognized that climate change is a threat multiplier. So if you are disadvantaged because you're a woman or because you're a child, climate change finds you as you are, and it makes your situation worse. And therefore, we need to have our pulse on this. So what would I say here as would be the main takeaways from this space? The international community, as we are inspired by the work of John and others, needs to recommit to multilateralism. Multilateralism right now is on its knees, and we need to recommit to it and to raise the bar in collective ambition. For instance, it is clear that if we only keep the commitments we have in our nationally determined contributions as they are, temperatures will rise by between 2.6 degrees to 4 degrees, which, as my boss Antonio Gutierrez keeps saying, will make this a living hell. So we need to deal with that. We also need to strengthen the education and awareness of the subject in our faculties. And it's good that we have young people, because if we just talk to ourselves who know about climate change, we don't transmit the knowledge. So I dare say, not just at university, but even in high schools, we should be teaching environmental law. But we also need strong education in science policy nexus for climate change, because environment is a multidisciplinary course. You will not be able to hack it by just saying, I am a lawyer. You must look onto science, and the scientist must also look onto the other side of policy and law. We need recognition of the gender dimension of climate change and other environmental challenges because of the gender division of labor. You know, many people keep saying this gender thing, people talk about it too much. But you will tell me who fetches water, who cooks, who looks for energy. And because of the gender division of labor in our households, it means that women are very affected by climate change and actually need to be considered. We also need to put in place measures for research. I'm very encouraged to hear that there's going to be a presentation on research that has been carried out. One of the things that I feel we probably failed the world in, or Africa in, was we were in this research group at the University of Zimbabwe, and Makerere was part of that group. At some point, Makerere fell out. And now what that has become is a master's program in women's, children's, and nature's rights in environmental governance, because there may be now somebody who will come and seek to protect the rights of the Rwenzoris as a biome, not as something that humans use. And that, in my view, is what is going to develop the gender divide, the transgenerational, but also looking beyond anthropocentric or human-centered environmentalism to also looking at the environment as also having a right to be in and of itself. As I end, I would like to leave you with two challenges. John planted the seeds of environmental rule of law globally. I can say that with the benefit of hindsight, that I am who I am because I worked with people like John Ntambirweki and people like Professor Okidi. I stood on the shoulders of giants. And so I feel that there should be also people standing on my shoulders. I may not be a giant literally, but I could also hold people on my shoulders. So he was a prophet who thankfully was recognized in his village, Africa and Uganda. who, I ask you, in this his home country of Uganda, is walking in his footsteps? Who in this country of Uganda is watering and nurturing what he planted so that it does not die? The other question that I would like to leave with you is, how will those who come after us, you know, we are not very young anymore, so we will not be able to tell this story over and over again. And you see, I know Africa likes the grapevine, but how will those who come after us know what John did if we don't immortalize it in written form? And I'd like to challenge the people who are here to think about putting this in writing so that the world has access to the great contributions that John made. I'd like to thank you for your attention and to wish you a good rest of the lectures.
Before you leave, Professor Kemeri Mbote, ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for Prof. Prof, thank you very much for speaking and linking Professor John Ntambirweki. I need a special umbrella courier. I think Musei himself can do that job very well. Please deliver Professor safely. Thank you very much, Professor Kemeri Mbote. Our panelists, we have listened. Dr. Sekajugo, I saw you making several notes. I'll give each one of you a minute when the session is on so that you have some go at it. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need an example of resilience. And also in honor of Professor Mbote's keynote lecture. My team, resilience oye! Resilience oye! Aya, speed, speed, speed. For us, we adapt, we go on, we don't fear despite the disaster that has befallen us. We want you to be happy. Professor Kemeri, this is really in honor of your lecture in Fort Portal Tourism City. Should you feel agitated enough, join. Let's enjoy this dance as if the rain never came. Thank you very, very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Young people, that is what we call resilience. Things are hard, but we decide to do the things we had to do, because not doing them means we shall not have done what we had to do. Our next presentation, we have listened to our keynote speaker, Professor Patricia Kemeri-Mbote, really giving us an international perspective and linking it to Professor John Ntambirweki and his works locally here. Thank you very much. Would now like to take it a bit closer at a national level, looking at the policy gaps and gender-sensitive approaches in climate adaptation in Uganda. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome Mrs. Margaret Atieno Mwebesa, Commissioner, Climate Change, National Focal Point, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, Ministry of Water and Environment. Mrs. Margaret Atieno Mwebesa works with the Ministry of Water's National Focal Point for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. She is also the National Project Coordinator for the Investing in Forests and Protected Areas for Climate Smart Development Project. This project was developed as a result of the reduced process, which greatly contributed to the National Climate Change Action Plan for Uganda, also known as the Nationally Determined Contribution, NDC 2022-2025, under the Paris Agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, join me to welcome our speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, our moderator. I'll stand on the already mentioned protocol, and I really want to say a good afternoon to everybody. It is an honor for me to stand before you today at this very prestigious memorial lecture in honor of a great legal scholar, environmental advocate, and champion of justice, Professor John Ntambirweki. His legacy reminds us of the power of knowledge and policy in shaping a just and sustainable future. I think a lot has already been said by the previous speakers, and we really want to honor his work. Allow me in a special way to express my gratitude to the Uganda Pentecostal University and Advocates Coalition for Development and Environment, ACCORD, and the John Ntambirweki Foundation for organizing the second Professor John Ntambirweki Memorial Lecture, a man who dedicated his entire career in promoting and fostering socio-economic development within our communities. Today's lecture, the theme, Inclusive Climate Change Adaptation for a Sustainable Uganda, addressing the impact of extreme weather events on women, national focal point for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, to ensure that those global policies that we negotiate, CCC conferences last year, as our keynote speaker said, resonates into government or is domesticated within our country, and we have relevant policies to address them. So for me, as a national focal point, I think when we have such lectures, we have such events, it really helps us take forward our role or mandate as a country. So distinguished delegates, the global nature of climate change necessitates that we have a concerted, well-coordinated cooperation and participation in international responses. Climate change is not only affecting Uganda. It's not only affecting the Rwenzori region, it's affecting the entire globe. If you hear today, it's burning in California. In Uganda, we have floods. In some parts, we are flooding. In some parts, we are burning. So climate change is for us all. And we shouldn't say, we shall not do our part because one of the parties has withdrawn. I'm talking of the US, for example. US withdrew from the Paris Agreement, from the UNFCCC, because they do not believe that climate change is real. But climate change is real, and it is affecting everybody, and it is going to affect them too. For that matter, Uganda is signatory to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and its implementation protocols. That is the Paris Agreement and the Kyoto Protocol. So our mandate, since we are parties, is to ensure that we reduce greenhouse gas emissions from all sectors. Our keynote speaker talked of the nationally determined contribution. Nationally determined contribution is what a country sets as its national climate action plan to reduce emissions and hence reduce temperature rises. So Uganda is signatory, and we have taken this very seriously, and that is one of my mandate as Commissioner for Climate Change. Now, the UNFCCC is implemented according to each country's greenhouse gas emissions and our ability to reduce and address those problems under the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities based on national circumstances. So Uganda, what we are doing what we can within our capability, within the existing resources that we have. But we can, of course, increase on this effort as a country. At the regional level, the climate change policy for the East African community urges partner states to develop consistent national policies to ensure harmonized action. We don't want Uganda to say, no, we don't have, we shall no longer ban charcoal. Then Kenya says, no, for us, we are going to ban charcoal. So we need to have very consistent and harmonized policies in order for us to address climate change. In Uganda, the development of the national climate change policy enables the country to fulfill its obligations under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and its implementation protocols, that is the Paris Agreement and the Kyoto Protocol. So for us as a country, we are privileged. We are one of the few countries with a climate change policy, and in Africa, I think we're just 5 with a Climate Change Act. And Uganda has gone forward even to now start preparing regulations for the Climate Change Act, which is not common among other countries. As we gather here in the Fort Portal City, in the heart of the Rwenzori region, we do so at a critical moment. Uganda is experiencing severe climate-related disasters as floods. You've seen how much this region, the Rwenzori region, has flooded. Whenever it starts raining, River Nyamwamba bursts its shores. So we are really at the center of the climate change effects. Floods, heat waves. The heat of late has been too much, causing devastating impacts on our people, our economy, and our environment, with women and children bearing the greatest burden. As you all know, Uganda's population is quite young, and most of us are women. 51% of Uganda's population is female, and 50.5% are children under the age of 18. So you can imagine the impact of climate change. It is the women who have to fetch the water. It's the women who have to dig and look for food. It's the women who have to look for firewood. So the effect of climate change is really hitting hard on the greatest population of the country, that is the women and the children. So climate change is not just an environmental issue, but a humanitarian, social, and economic crisis. In the Rwenzori region, extreme weather events have increased by 25% over the last decade, destroying livelihoods. We've seen how many homes, how many people have been displaced within the region. You can imagine families living in camps. You've been removed, you've been displaced from your livelihoods. So we really need to do something as a country. And we have families being displaced and food security is being threatened. Food crop failures is increasing by the day, hence leading to malnutrition, especially among the younger population, the children who comprise of a very big percentage of our population. And we also know that women in Uganda, in rural Uganda, are the backbone of our agricultural economy. Yet they are the least equipped to cope with climate shocks. They are responsible for feeding their families, collecting water, collecting firewood, sustaining their communities. Yet when floods and droughts strike, they lose access to food, water, and income. But also, we are losing infrastructure, very important infrastructures. If you look at our the floods when the River Nyamwamba bursts, we always lose a lot of our infrastructure. Hospitals, the Kilembe Hospital is down, the roads are down, so climate change is real and we need a concerted effort. We also now have waterborne diseases becoming more and more prevalent due to climate-induced disasters. Waterborne diseases, diarrhea, name it, dysentery. It is affecting especially communities that are now in camps. So we cannot afford to leave anyone behind, especially the women and the children. Droughts have also been documented to reduced calories and nutrient availability, particularly protein and zinc supply in children. With over 26% of children under 5 stunted, unchecked climate variability and change may increase the levels of stunting. So, fellow Ugandans, we don't want to have a stunted community, so we need to act, we need to work together to ensure we really address this climate change impact. According to the Notre Dame Global Adaptation Initiative Index, Uganda is considered one of the most vulnerable communities to climate change, ranking around the 14th most vulnerable country in the world. It's so sad. So that shows we are not prepared when droughts come, when rains come, floods come, we are not prepared. So we are totally not prepared. Being 14th most vulnerable globally is not a good index. So we really need to work together and really fight this problem. Therefore, climate adaptation must be inclusive, gender responsive, and community driven if we are to address the impact of climate change on our communities. So the issue of women and children, gender must be inclusive, and whatever plans we have, whatever programs we have, should really be gender responsive so that the different players can do their part effectively. Now, Uganda's policy and legal framework on climate change adaptation is real. Uganda has made great strides in developing climate change policy and legal frameworks to adapt climate change. As I said, Uganda is one of the first countries in Africa to have both a climate change policy and a legal framework. Uganda's Vision 2040 also outlines Uganda's long-term development agenda, which dedicates a whole chapter to social transformation, which means we are not leaving anybody behind. The whole society must be transformed, and especially section 5.9, which focuses on climate change, resilience building, and adaptation. Uganda is also preparing a long-term strategy for reducing emissions and as required under the UNFCCC, and I think by next year we shall be launching it. Uganda already has a nationally determined contribution, but under the UNFCCC framework, we are expected to have a long-term strategy for reducing emissions, which spans up to 2050, and Uganda is doing that. The National Development Plan, 3 outgoing now, and we are now having NDP 4. We have insisted under Program 9, which prioritizes natural resources, environment, climate change, land and water management, which aims to stop, reduce, and reverse environmental degradation and adverse effects of climate change. So Uganda is moving in the right direction. Even our national development plans, 3, the National Development Plan 4 is critically addressing the effects of climate change. Uganda is currently preparing the NDP 4, and the ministry insisted that the NDP 4 should be well aligned with Uganda's nationally determined contribution, which is Uganda's Climate Change Action Plan. And thank God this has been done. So if our NDP 4 is funded, our NDC will also be funded. So that is the strategy we used as a country. We are also, under the climate change policy, there was a gap, and we are trying to bridge that gap when it comes to the issue of gender mainstreaming and implementation. So under the support of FAO, Uganda is coming up with a gender-responsive climate planning framework. But also under the UNFCCC, we have a dedicated negotiation or thematic area for gender and climate change. So Uganda is part and parcel of this thematic working group, and we are also now coming up with a national action plan for gender for the country. Also under the National Climate Change Act, every district, every lead agency is supposed to come up with a climate change action plan. And we are moving towards that. It is slow, but it is coming up. And we have a number of districts that are already preparing their district climate change action plan. So Fort Portal City, unfortunately, doesn't have one, and we shall call upon the Fort Portal City to ensure that it comes up with also a climate change action plan, which is also expected for us under the UNFCCC. Uganda also has a strategic program for climate resilience, which is really our Bible, which we use for addressing the climate change that impact on the national economy, including development of resilient and vulnerable communities. Uganda has also launched the National Adaptation Plan in 2023. And the process is ongoing. It is with the support from Global Climate Facility through the UNEP, UNEP. Uganda also is one of the first countries in Africa to have come up with a Kampala Declaration on Climate Change, Environment, and Mobility. We all know that climate change has a big impact on the movement of people and animals. So Uganda has this declaration. It was signed in 2022 June in Uganda by none other than our president and the ministers of environment of a number of countries in the Eastern Africa and the Horn of Africa. But now this Kampala Declaration is going beyond Kampala Declaration. It has become the Kampala Declaration on environment, climate change, and mobility for Africa. And we have a number of countries that are already signing to this agreement. And we are really happy. So far, I think we have over 37, and the mobilization of all countries in Africa to sign this agreement is going on. With the support from the Global Climate Mobility Center, this is a mobility center profile in New York that is supporting Uganda. We came up with a blueprint for Uganda climate mobility, and it is being analyzed. And it was also launched in New York last year during the United Nations General Assembly. These are all policies, these are all very good interventions that will help Uganda mobilize resources. We have done so much, but however, there are still challenges. But before I go to the challenges, under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, ladies and gentlemen, we have a dedicated effort or thematic area to ensure gender is included in all our negotiations, in all our plans, in all that we do. So Uganda is fully committed to global action and has been an active participant in international climate change negotiations. We also have a dedicated, as government of Uganda, in collaboration with various development partners, such as British Council, UNDP, GIZ, FAO, and other partners, we are investing heavily in capacity building for our youth to participate in these climate change negotiations. And to us, I think, so that the young people's voices are heard, are represented at that high level. Even when we go for the UNFCCC negotiations, we have the youth, we have children attending these negotiations. So Uganda's role in the UNFCCC processes reflects our dedication to gender-sensitive climate adaptation, but also the real challenge that lies in translating these global commitments in action at local level. Also under the UNFCCC, we have the Youth Inclusion Program. It is called YUNGO. The objective of this youth constituency of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is to empower children and youth to actively participate in climate change policy discussions. And Uganda has been sending the youth, and our youth are being sponsored to go for these negotiations. Ladies and gentlemen, we have very many positive things, but we also have challenges or policy barriers. Despite Uganda having these robust policies and commitments, we still have significant gaps that remain in implementation, particularly in gender-sensitive adaptation. And this, as I said, really needs to be addressed through all these different plans or by everybody. It can't be only the Ministry of Water and Environment or government. And I'm very glad that even in universities, you are now having such courses where gender and climate change and environment issues are really being integrated into the courses. We, as a Ministry of Water and Environment and the Climate Change Department in particular, we are also mandated to issue a certificate of compliance to the National Budget Framework Papers. It is a mandate, it is within the Climate Change Act, and Uganda has been doing this since 2022. We want to ensure that Uganda's National Budget Framework Paper or climate Uganda's ministerial policy papers are well aligned with the climate goals or our nationally determined contribution. So every year we assess the National Budget Framework Paper and give a certificate. In fact, before that certificate is given to Minister of Finance, it cannot take the National Budget Framework Paper to Parliament or to Cabinet. So for us as a ministry, that was a big achievement, because without having climate change well aligned in our National Budget Framework Papers, then we are not doing walking the talk as we are supposed to. But we have also some challenges on this, because currently we are assessing the budget framework paper at a very high level, at the program level. It should be right up to down the lower levels, district levels. And we really assess, our districts doing that? Are they planning properly? Are they getting money for these actions? So with time, this is what we want to do, but we are starting at a higher level. The Office of the Prime Minister developed a national disaster risk atlas in 2019, and it also includes for the districts in the Rwenzori sub-region. Many districts, including the Rwenzori region, lack disaster risk reduction plans. We need to have all countries have disaster risk disaster plans, so that we are able really to align the initiatives we want to have to really tackle these climate problems we are having. These assessments are critical in identifying vulnerable populations and ecosystems and proposing targeted adaptation actions. If you look at the Rwenzori region, it's very unique, it's very rich, it is a water tower, it is an ecological catchment, so it really needs to have its action plans well defined. Other challenges we are facing is resource limitation in terms of financial and human resources. Our nationally determined contribution that spans from 2020 to 2030 requires $28.1 billion over the 10 years. But how much have we received or mobilized over this period? This is something, as a ministry, we are going to take a stock take, a national stock take, to really see how much money we have mobilized and how much we have implemented of our nationally determined contribution. We also have limited access to climate information and extension services, high costs of adaptation measures, and yet we don't have the resources. We have insecure land tenure, especially for the women. Our ladies don't own land, so that's a big, big problem. We have lack of coordinated planning across sectors, across ministries, departments, and agencies, and generally poor communication within the country. As I conclude, I really want to say that we are all Ugandans, that Uganda's ability to effectively adapt to climate change depends on how inclusive and gender responsive our strategies are. So investing in the resilience of women and children is a strategic necessity for our country's future. The Ministry of Water and Environment is committed to strengthening gender inclusion in climate policies, enhancing climate financing for women-led adaptation projects, and ensuring stronger coordination among government, civil society, and the private sector. So this is also a collaborative effort which requires local governments. So for Poto City, the entire Rwenzori region, you are part of this game. We need you to develop climate change action plans. And according to the Climate Change Act, the Minister of Finance is supposed to provide the money for these action plans. So let us do our part, and we leave it to the other players to do their part. Let us work together to bridge the policy gaps, empower women and youth, and build a climate resilient Uganda. As a country, we shall uphold the climate change principle of not leaving anyone behind, which means ensuring that climate action plans and responses actively address the needs of the most vulnerable populations, particularly those who are disproportionately impacted by climate change due to factors like poverty, geographical location, or social marginalization, name it. and that they are not left behind in efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change, essentially prioritizing equity and justice in climate action. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Margaret Otieno Mwebesa, Commissioner, Climate Change Secretariat, Ministry of Water and Environment in Uganda. Thank you very much. From your elaborate presentation, could all the students stand up? All students here, especially the, hey, but these ones look like big students. Okay. You are in secondary school. You are the ones over here. Now you're almost gone, but you first sit down.
For the good introduction. All the distinguished dignitaries who have already spoken and those who are seated there, and all other invited guests. When Professor Pels invited me and first called me in September last year, and later asked me to, talk about inclusive, management of, the disproportionate impacts of climate change on women and children. It took me time to even flash back the 10 years ago I started doing research on disaster risk management. I started this when I was in Busitema, as I've told you. I've been in Mount Elgon region, in Bududa, in Kapchorwa, in Bulambuli, doing landslide mapping and understanding the locations. I've worked in Mount Rwenzori also doing the same. I've been in Kigezi doing the same. So now, while the others have talked about different aspects, I will speak from the research perspective, okay? But before I do that, sometimes when I'm discussing with my fellow academicians across the globe, some people tend to argue, sometimes when even people here start talking about climate change in Uganda, some people start asking, but is it really climate change? They don't even want to imagine that the climate is changing here. And they start forcing us to talk about climate variability, but not climate change. And we want to ask ourselves, is the climate changing? And therefore, should we be concerned? So when I was reading the IPCC report of 2022, it shows that the annual mean temperature, or the temperature in Uganda, is expected to increase in a range of 1.0 to 3.1 degrees centigrade by 2060. It is expected to change by a range of 1.0 to 3.1 by 2060. But we also know that a 0.2 degree change, 0.2 increase, is just enough to raise the sea level by 1 meter. Just a 0.2. Now, if it increases by 3, the interlocal we are talking about and all the roads will be immersed in water. Okay? It also shows that the future increase in annual rainfall, as we are seeing, is likely to be between -8 and +46%. So it's likely that these erratic rains that we are talking about, it is still just an initiation stage. The World Bank Group report of 2021, it also shows that the annual temperature and rainfall increase in Uganda will change the frequency and the intensity of natural hazards. So what we are seeing, it is likely that these increases that already IPCC is reporting and we are seeing are likely to change the frequency and the intensity of natural hazards. So the floods they are seeing, the droughts you are seeing are likely to increase the more, both in frequency and in intensity. Now, when we look at the Rwenzori Mountains, okay, that we are focusing on today, the Rwenzori Mountains has a very big proportion of land covered by the protected areas. The Rwenzori National Park, and down you have the Queen Elizabeth and the lakes that are associated with this. And therefore the area inhabitable, the area that where people live, is very small. Okay? And therefore leaves this area highly cultivated, highly inhabited, and it is a region that has one of the highest population densities in the country. When I was doing my research the last years in my PhD, I realized most of these areas, the population density is above 1,500 per square kilometer. So it's very serious. And because of now this, we see more and more people settling in the fragile highlands. More and more people settling in the wetlands. Those who know Kasese and you know the Karusandara areas, you know what is there. So increasingly, as we talk about the floods and what you see more people going into the highlands and the others into the wetlands. When it floods, they say no, it is difficult. They start running in the highlands. When the landslides start, again they run down to the wetlands down. And yet these regions, the commissioner was talking about, if you look at the reports of Office of the Prime Minister, most of the reports, these regions are highly prone to landslides, to floods. Okay, very prone. But this is where we are running. And if you look at the global reports, are all showing that our regions are highly exposed to these natural hazards. Look back, some of you, where you come from, in most of these highland areas. These are your homesteads. These are your areas. You see where you are settling. Okay? We are more and more becoming exposed to these natural hazards. And therefore, we cannot run away from the impacts. And for those who have been in these areas, those who have been in Kilembe, those who have been in Nyamugasani, those who have been in Lamia, in Bundibujo, those who have seen Kirumia areas, those who have been in Intoroko, Budoda, we have been, you will see how much or how hard these hazards are hitting us. The impact is huge, both on the physical infrastructure, as the commissioner was talking about, but also on the human health and also our major livelihoods. We have seen people dying. I took a note when Professor Patricia was talking about the case that the Bududa people have put. And when you mentioned about that case, Commissioner whispered to me that, but these are natural hazards. You get it? But I was trying to think about it. I said, this book might be having a point. Because if you look at the risk equation, I was reading one of the report of the strong writers, Raju. It is urged that while some of these hazards are natural, the other variables that make the risk equation can be politically and socio-economically constructed. The vulnerabilities. EU. So please, as they talked, take interest in these and make a contribution. There should be deliberate efforts to invest in educating and developing skills for both the children and the women. When I was in Kitagwenda and Kamwenge of recent, consulting on developing some a curriculum in water resource management, I was discussing with women and some men. But wherever you would reach about some of these, they say, but for us, we didn't study. Those are your things you want. Go, whatever you do. For us, we don't understand those things. And these are the mothers. So we need to deliberately invest in educating our people, both in the informal way, in the universities and schools, but also have tailored informal trainings in the communities. Strengthen the community solidarity schemes. Madam Commissioner and the distinguished guests, have we ever asked ourselves, when the disasters strike and we take 5-10 kilograms of posho to the affected people, have we ever asked ourselves how they survive for the rest of the months and the years after the 2 days when the posho is finished? These people have their own local savings and solidarity schemes where they borrow, make small businesses, sell vegetables, and survive. We need to strengthen these solidarity schemes. That's why we should invest. Strengthen them, put more resources, train them to manage them so that they can develop them into local insurance schemes for disasters. Empower the women and the children and all the other people to obtain the required climate information and participate in decision making. For now, recently I launched a project, 5-year project in Kasese, where with development partners, we are trying to build a dense network of monitoring stations, automated monitoring stations for both rainfall, temperature, and river discharge. We need to strengthen these so that we can have the required data we need. We need also to improve access to health care and sanitation, as the others have been mentioning. And deliberate, of course, they have talked about the gender, things that I will not repeat, which need to be integrated in all our programs. And lastly, we need to integrate climate and environment studies in all curricula. From primary or nursery up to the universities, we should integrate climate and environment studies in all our curriculums. Okay? And lastly, let us all do it right before our climate changes the more. I thank you very much for listening, and I wish you a good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sekajugo. If you don't mind, you may actually take any seat of your choice here, but if you want first to go back to your boma, please do so. Thank you very much, Dr. Sekajugo, and my take home here is we need to listen to the ground. We need to listen to the ground. Thank you very much, Dr. Sekajugo, once again. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to chip in this. I would like to recognize His Excellency, the Guild President of UPU, Mr. Bunani Julius. Please stand up and walk around. Stand up and walk around. You tell the students that where you are is where they are coming. They should protect the environment to find this green space. President of Greatest Law Society, Mr. B. Cicera Peter Mahogany. There is another Mahogany, I don't know how you are related. Deputy Speaker UPU, Ankunda Anolin. Thank you. And all students of UPU here present, both Kampala and Fort Portal. Please, with your president, stand up and wave to the people so that everybody knows you are the people for whom John Ntambirweki, Professor, took his time to mold and model this foundation for you. Thank you very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like us to wrap up, and we are going to do this very scientifically. But I would also want to announce that the John Ntambirweki Foundation will ensure that a record of the memorial lectures is done. It is documented, both in print but also digital versions. There are lots of important issues being raised, and we hope that policy can be informed. Policy briefs come out of discussions of this nature. It is information that is unique because it is here for us. I also want to announce that if there are any district environment officers here present, please look for Barbara Ntambirweki. She would like to speak with you, and you are especially invited because you are people that can help uptake some of these particular matters. For all those who have questions, I am going to request that the Guild President help me with the ushers today to give out pieces of paper to all those who have questions that will be brought here and we read them out. All those who have questions, please. If there is a PhD student here that is doing their PhD in environment studies, is there anybody? By show of hands. Are you sure? Mia was talking my own things. You are there. Apostle. Okay. We will, I think, grant you an opportunity in due course. You deserve to ask a question because you need to pass. Thank you very much. And if you see me forgetting you, please, you simply walk forward. You have all right of way. Yes, when we take on the few questions. Honorable Alex Hunda, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. We are happy to receive you, and we have a slot for you to speak to your people as we conclude. You are the voice of the voices of those who have no voices. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite our panelists so that we can quickly break this down, have a way forward, and see how we conclude this memorial lecture with all the heavy dose of knowledge. Allow me to invite Miss Gloria Namakula, a Ugandan climate and gender equality advocate. Gloria Namakula is a young Ugandan. I was seeking for permission. Gloria Namakula is a 25-year-old, 2.5 decades, half a what? Old advocate, and she's passionate about climate change and gender equality. Growing up in rural Uganda, she witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of prolonged drought on her community, which fueled her drive for advocacy. A graduate of Busitema University with a degree in natural resource economics, Gloria co-founded the Flourish Women Africa Foundation to address social and environmental issues. Through the She Leads program, she has gained expertise in policy advocacy and has spoken at various high-level forums. She currently leads the Uganda Green Warriors under the She Leads Climate cohort, advocating for climate justice and sustainable decision-making at all levels. Join me to welcome Gloria Namakula. I wish in the same vein to re-invite Dr. John Sekajugo to also come and join us. I am also inviting Muzeye Bidodo Benedict, a community activist from Kasese. Born on 15th January 1965 in Musasa village. Muzeye Bidodo started his primary school from Musasa Primary School in 1973 to 1979, where he attained his primary education. He went for secondary education at SAD Memorial Secondary School from 1980 to 1986, Form 1 to Form 6. He further went for higher education at International Professional Academy, Kabale, where he attained a diploma in business management from 1994 to 1995. He's married to Masika Emilda and with 6 wonderful children. He's also a social worker and a farmer. Mzee Bidodo is a focal person for Nyamugasana Valley disaster preparedness. He trains communities about climate change and management and managing riverbanks of River Nyamugasana. He also manages the cooperation of farmers, marketing, production, and also links services to the government and NGO. He also encourages the planting of trees to protect the environment. Muzei Bidodo Benedict, you're very welcome to come and join us up front. I think he was here, he's just probably stepped up. I would also re-invite our Commissioner, Mrs. Margaret Atieno Amwebesa, to come to our panel. Okay, we'll look for Mzee Bidodo. Thank you very much. Kindly feel free. I have the honor to hand each one of you a microphone. It might not be of your choice, but this one is fit for the commissioner. Dr. Sekajugo, Mzee Bidodo, this one is yours. We will try and see that we each can have a brief moment. We'll start with Ms. Namakula. We will ask you to, within 5 minutes, to share with us the role of the youth in building climate resilience in Uganda. You can feel free to remain seated or stand, the choice is yours, or even move closer to those young people. Feel free, but that is also okay for you. Thank you very much. When you see me standing near you, I am simply saying quickly, quickly.
Thank you very much, dear moderator. Am I audible? Yes. Thank you very much, dear moderator. Allow me, right on the already laid protocol. Once again, my name is Namakula Gloria. I'm happy to be here for this very amazing function. I want to welcome you all, especially the young people. Where the young people, some energy, So, from the question that have been asked, the role of youth. As we all know, as we all understand, Uganda has the youngest population. From the previous speakers we have heard, they have given us statistics, and it shows that 78% of the population of Uganda are youth, young people within the age of 15 to 24. So basically, Uganda has one of the youngest populations. And us being the youngest, yet we are the many, young and we are many, it is very crucial to take an active role. We have to play a very pivotal role to ensure that we address the crisis we are in. Because I want you to understand that the crisis doesn't discriminate. Well, to go straight to what the moderator has asked, as youth, as young people, we really have the mandate to take on the mantle. Given the fact that as we talk now, we are being given the platforms to come and listen. Actually, we really need to applaud or to clap for the people who came up with this day to ensure that we come and learn on this crucial day, because it's very important for you to have knowledge, because as youth, once you have knowledge, we're able to come up with innovative solutions. Well, one of the roles as youth that we have to do is to ensure that we come up with innovative solutions, but these innovative solutions are not going to come if we fail to go to school. As young people, we ought to go to school. For example, from the previous speaker, Doctor talked about how the youth who have neglected to take up the science courses, where we can be able to come up with innovative solutions. They're talking about statistics. We can't do much without the statistics, without the knowledge, because ideally, if you don't have the knowledge, meaning you are a noise maker. The policy makers we are listening to now, the policy makers in this place, they will never listen to you if you don't have vivid evidence, if you don't have the statistics. So it's up to us as young people to ensure that we go to school. Education is power, and education is a must for the young people. Then the other role as youth is to be whistleblowers. Ours is to advocate, because if we keep quiet, no one will understand our need. Because from the previous speakers, they talk about the statistics. They show the vulnerability of young people. They talk about the women. If we fail to advocate, if we fail to be whistleblowers, to keep the policymakers in check, we shall keep lamenting. So as young people, ours is to be educated, have the information, then we keep in check. We whistleblow to the different policymakers that this is happening. The flooding in Kasese has been reoccurring. What could be the issue? Where are the opportunities? How can we dive in to ensure that we are able to supplement the different researches or the different things so that we can get solutions? Because if we keep quiet, trust me, in most cases, I wake up and I'm like, what will I tell my children? What will I tell the generation to come? What will I tell my siblings? That in my youthful period, in my youthful stage, we kept on ranting, we kept on keeping quiet as things happened. So it is very crucial for us as the sanctions that have happened. As young people, as innovators, we have a role to play. Those who pollute have to pay for it. Even if we trickle it down to the industries, in the different homes, in the different homesteads where we are coming from, we know of an industry that pollutes. But as youth, what have we done? Have we advocated, or we have kept quiet to keep on lamenting? My mother can't be lamenting, and me, the youthful person, am also lamenting. So it's upon us to ensure that we are educated, we have the knowledge, and we are able to speak up, because in speaking up, we are going to be able to come up with solutions. Then the youth, let us be innovative. I'm glad that during our Generation Z, we have the technology. Information is everywhere. Can we partake up information? The times you're on TikTok, which kind of information are you looking at? Can we look at educative things and come up with innovations? For example, we all understand whenever crises come, we are grappling with energy poverty. Firewood is nowhere we have to eat. As young people, are you able to come up and do happen? Because my prayer is, as young people, who have been given an opportunity and a platform to listen to the different speakers, that one day, 20 years to come, people will have to gather like what John Ntambirweki Foundation is doing, and they celebrate the different milestones. They celebrate the different achievements, the innovations we have come out with. But if we decide to keep quiet, the ball is in our hands, we shall keep lamenting. Permit me stop here, I'll come back, thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask, please write down your questions. We will find a way of bringing them over. I would like to invite Mzee Bidodo to kind of give us a lived experience of climate change impact and coping mechanisms in Kasese. Thank you, Mzee.
Thank you very much, moderator. All protocol observed. I feel really privileged. I don't normally address big gatherings like today. I'm a rural person living up in the mountains, and this chance of addressing people is really a privilege to me. I'm given a duty to give stories of surveillance, how we cope up with the climate change in our area. I happened to be born a little bit earlier in the mid-60s, and when you grew up, and also I happened to have been living near River Nyamugasane, up in the mountains. As younger people, there were not so many people in our area. And if you move towards the river, you find 3 different stages of vegetation. Just near the river, you'd find river reeds taking around 30 to 50 meters. After that one, there would be some big trees. But underneath, there's a built-up of shrubs and climbers. Then after that one, you'd find grassland. Savanna type of climate. And even when the river would flood, people wouldn't feel it. And these words like flooding were not there. The river would flood, run through those bushes, and not reach people's gardens. But today, the thing has turned different. And one of the reasons why people have increased in number, they have encroached on everything, and now the river bursts out and carries people's crops, even buildings. We are really at a very big risk, because even now in Kasese, there are people who have lived in a camp for almost 7 years now. They have nowhere to go. Their houses were submerged. So we are really suffering. And just recently, around 2 years ago, not a year ago, last year, in my own area, we lost around 12 people by landslides. Everybody was at a panic, and really, even today, whenever it rains, we are at a panic. So we find really so many things have changed. We are really suffering. We don't know where to go. Because even today, because of these changes, we feel we are more poorer than around 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I remember when I grew up, food was not scarce. You could move to a neighbor, get food. You could find ripes in gardens everywhere. And the real setup has really changed. Even the respect people gave to each other was different. I remember my father could prepare brew, this local brew called Tonto. And whenever he invited friends to come and enjoy it, they could even prepare some food for these people. And I found that there is classes of how the setup of the village is set. You find there is people of some higher class. They are given some status, how they would enjoy this. But today, that setup is different now. Our culture has really eroded. You find even today, a very old man seems to be respecting a very younger person because the setup with these changes has really destabilized us. And how people have coped with this, really, I don't know how I should talk about it, because our people, because of lack of where to go, you find many of them still moving to where it is very vulnerable. You find people coming to the valleys where it has been flooding always, but they still built up houses down there. Well, we have tried some level, because you find some people are really planting trees within the valleys. They are planting along on the boundaries. They are trying. They are also setting up some schemes, like the village saving schemes. There are really so many, and most of them are managed by women. This is measures to mitigate some of the levels, how people are really suffering. I happen to be leading a small cooperative down there. And what we do is to encourage our farmers really plant high value crops. And one of the crops we are encouraging is coffee. But as the previous speakers have been saying, you find on the lower lands, coffee is dying. It's no longer producing. And people have opted to plant coffee in the hills, cutting down these trees to plant coffee. And this cutting down of trees is really also affecting us very much, because of most of the land now is vulnerable to landslides. Also, in that small cooperative, we started a savings scheme. Members come and deposit their money, and then later on, when there is need, they come and withdraw. They can also access some credit. So that's how we are managing simply as a small people. There are several of them in the district, but not so strong to manage or to help these people. And then lastly, what I should say is to ask the policy makers. Really, there's some policies that we are on paper, but they are not really implemented. And we find people really falling victims of these disasters. And I'm sometimes being named a pessimist, because the effects in our community are really high. There are really now so many younger mothers, and most of these younger mothers are not beyond the age of 17, 18. And these younger mothers, most of them have really separated. They were not formally married. They just find a partner, they produce children, and then get back to their homes. They are not educated, and it is really a very big problem. Even those called husbands to them, sometimes you find most of them cannot be able to write or even read their names. Most of them we are finding when there's this exercise of NIN registration. You find a group of people really not able to write their names on the paper. And it's really a very big problem. And when all this comes, then you find really we are at a big risk. I think I could stop here. I have so many stories I would give, but because of time, I think I could stop here. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Mzee Bidodo. Thank you. I would like to pick one question before I open up the floor and the panels. My PhD. You can come and ask a question which is simple for the students to also understand.
Okay. Thank you very much. Protocol observed. My name is Mhumuza Simon. I am a PhD student, like they have said, but I also have a Master of Science in Climate Change and Food Security. And I'm happy that, Doctor, you are my alumni from Nyabia Forestry College. In the interest of time, I have a question for the students, but also I need to answer a question from the professor about what we are doing to water the seed that Professor John Ntambirweki has sowed. So the question to the students, when you hear or when we talk about climate change, what comes to your mind? And how does it affect you? And what are you doing or what are you going to do to mitigate the impacts of climate change? That one is food for thought. In your discussions, please, I would encourage you to discuss about climate change and what you can do. To answer a question, because this is more of the family and the foundation issue. When Professor John Ntambirweki, who happens to be my uncle, died, I thought we cannot just leave it at that because he has been a global environmentalist and we used to talk a lot. So I would like to answer that we are not seated. Since he died, we have through Green Environment Organization, a CBO which I lead, and with support from family members and the well-wishers, we have so far planted more than 3,000 trees in different communities and institutions in Uganda and across the region. And our target is that we should plant, for every year that he lived on earth, we are going to plant 1,000 trees. Multiplied by the number of years he lived, we are going to achieve this. Yeah, people should clap because we are already on the move. What are we doing? We are working with different institutions like UNRWA to restore degraded areas, green along the roadsides. We started with Ibanda, Kamwenge, where Professor's residence is. Along the highways, already the trees are more than 2 years and growing and beautifying the environment in memory. And of course, we are working with schools and institutions. Primary schools like Nyakatete, institutions, secondary schools like Peace Secondary School, which is within the division where Professor's residence is. I would like just to say that Uganda Pentecostal University, we have started a program with Bishop Stewart University and soon Ibanda University, but we would like to partner with Uganda Pentecostal University and look at the role of institutions, especially higher institutions, in climate change, adaptation, and mitigation measures. And I think Uganda Pentecostal University, you are in a strategic place, especially for River Mpanga. You can take a lead in this, and we can guide, and we are ready to continue watering professors' seed, and it will live on. I want to end here in interest of time, but ask our commissioner, who has really given a good keynote speech, that we are available, we have the knowledge, and one of the challenges, you say that you lack climate change extension workers. We are here. you can engage us, and we are ready to serve. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question. Some questions have been brought to you. So, Dr. Sekajugo. There are questions there for you. Mr. Bidodo, have you picked up that question? You can quickly give it to us while the other questions are being prepared, followed by your microphone is there.
Thank you very much, Kivende Kabwampale Chris. He has asked me two questions. One is, after how long is resumption of settlement and economic activity supposed to be in historically disaster-affected areas, e.g. floods and landslides? Then the second one was, apart from mass evacuations of the disaster-affected persons, what other measures can be addressed by government after several research has been made? In fact, Mr. Bwampale, I'm a low person living in a rural area. I'm not a government servant. I may not be able to answer some of these questions or address them better, but to my understanding, as you have heard from several speakers, land in Kasese is scarce. There is no land there. At average, a household owns around an acre or two. And these people cannot wait, because even where there was landslides just last August, they were there in April, May. People are already planting bananas and coffee in those red soil where there was a landslide. People are already planting their crops. They are not waiting. So they would wait if there was land. But because of scarcity of land, people are not waiting. Because even when you go there, you'll find these people cultivating in those lands. And where even it is so steep, people are again putting up buildings to go back to those areas. You find really people are at risk, but they have nowhere to go. They have nothing to do. Even they lack even advisors who should advise them. We try as local facilitators, but these people, the problem is so huge. Then from the second question, there is a group of people who moved from Kanyenkeya. They are settled in Muhocha for around 5 years, 7. They are still there. They have no home. Government looked for land to these people, but there's so many mistakes within, and these people have no land. The land that was promised to them is occupied by other people. Somebody claimed it is his land, but some other people are also claiming it is theirs. So there's a lot of corruption within it, and I'm not able to answer this one. So thank you very much, Mr. Wabale.
We can hand it over to someone who pick it up. I would start with Commissioner. We could quickly go through in as a short period as possible. I am hoping that we can close this ceremony at 6 p.m.
Thank you so much. I have a number of questions, but they are all most of them are related. One, what is the government of Uganda doing to balance between the growing use of agricultural chemicals and GMOs and its devastating impact on the environment? As a country, of course, we promote growing of crops using our indigenous knowledge. But also, of course, because of a number of pests and diseases that have come up, most of our farmers are now using agricultural chemicals in order to at least get good yields. But as much as possible, if our farmers can use biological means to manage pests or to control pests, that would be very good. However, as I said, I think we have a problem with extension services. We have, I think, a breakdown in our extension services to our farmers. Our farmers need more advice, extension advice regarding agriculture, forestry, wetlands, name it. But this is also a big gap. But under also Ministry of Agriculture, I think we have the NADS also supporting the farmers. We have the PDM, Parish Development Model. It's also supporting farmers in ensuring that we have sustainable agricultural production. When it comes to GMOs, of course, as Uganda, we wouldn't want GMOs, but we are part of the bigger globe. Because of the devastating climatic conditions we are all facing now, you find that GMOs are being promoted. But during these negotiations, when we go for these United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change negotiations, we have thematic groups, we have working groups that are looking at food systems. We are saying we still want to promote our old ways of agricultural production, but of course with some bit of improvement. So like, for example, having our old seeds, the indigenous seeds, it's something we still want to promote. If you look at the GMOs currently, if you have maybe a seed for passion fruits, you may not be able to multiply that seed. You have to go back to the same source to buy the seed. So those are some of the things we are really trying to negotiate and see how we can have a balance when it comes to these global climate negotiations. As one of the students is asking, why is it that environmental protection is commonly enforced in urban areas and not in rural areas? I don't think this is true. It is supposed to be across the country. The law for environmental protection or management cuts across the entire country. So if we are not doing it in our districts, then I think our district environment officers, our district natural sources officers, you really need to see that this is done. I know we have an, what would I call, constraint of facilitation in terms of logistics, vehicles to go deep down to the villages, to the communities. But really, that is why in the districts we have the district officials, district technical officers who should help us implement some of these laws, some of these policies. So it is not only for urban areas, it is also for rural areas. And you can also report this to your district natural resources officer. I think this is also allowed in the districts. At what percentage has government of Uganda tried to sensitize the local natives on the importance of environmental conservation? Of course, there are very many channels that this is being done, where communities are really told, communicated to about environmental conservation, but also through the different barazas in the villages, through the LCs, but also in schools. We promote environmental conservation right from when the child is young. in the primary schools, you have the SSST. Those are all really to ensure that we really build this within our young people as they grow. And what is the medicine for landslides in mountainous areas such as Kasese area region? These mountain areas, for example, are supposed to be left intact because they also play a very vital ecological role. As I said, for example, for the Rwenzori region, the Rwenzori mountains are a big catchment, water catchment for all these rivers downstream. The River Nile, the Albert, the River Semiliki, these river Nyamwambas are bursting their banks because we have destroyed the ecological ecosystem within where the rivers flow. So the other thing is that we need to leave the fragile ecosystems like the mountains intact. They are supposed to be left intact. However, where we are doing maybe crop agricultural productivity, we need to also practice agroforestry where we have terracing on those hills, on those slopes, so that in case we have runoffs from the rain, it instead percolates slowly into the soil. So we can have agroforestry systems established in these hilly or mountainous areas, and also planting of the appropriate trees. The right species of trees to be planted in the different locations. So species site matching is very critical in all our different agroecological areas. What has the Ministry in charge for environment done to the flooding of Kasese town? Of course, we are promoting tree planting. We are also doing a lot of sensitization. The River Nyamwamba that keeps bursting, I think the Ministry of Water and Environment through the Water Directorate, we are also helping to build gabions to stop the water from flowing into the other land. But also we are asking communities, please, can we leave these very vital areas or ecosystems intact so that they can play their role. If we left these mountains intact, we would be able to control, to regulate the water bodies, and we wouldn't have these floods. The other question, why is it that some people in Uganda are having immunity to build in wetlands? It's not supposed to be that. Nobody has immunity to build in a wetland. Wetlands are a natural resource. And the Ministry of Water and Environment and the NEMA, National Environment Management Authority, is holding these wetlands in trust for the good of the country. But you can use wetlands sustainably. There are certain activities that can be done in wetlands, like fish farming can be done in wetlands, horticulture in some wetlands, but responsible use of wetlands is allowed, but not destructive, because wetlands play also a very vital role in regulating the water sources, the water bodies, to avoid flooding. So it's the same about it. How far has the Ugandan government helped in conserving the environment? I think we have policies, we have laws, we've been talking about them, and we are now also trying to ensure that environmental conservation and climate change is integrated in the curricula, right from the lower levels and into the tertiary institutions. And we also expect our natural resources officers in the different districts also to play their role. How has the Ugandan government managed to come up with a resolution of solving the climatic solutions. Now we have the National Climate Change Action Plan, as I said, and districts are supposed to come up with district climate change action plans, which according to the climate change law, the Minister of Finance should fund these plans. But of course there are limitations, but we are supposed to do our role. And climate change action plan is for everybody, including the NGOs, the government. It cuts across every one of us, the farmers. So let us play our role as Ugandans. How can a youth contribute to the conserving of the environment and climate change as a main problem in Uganda? The youth can be involved in tree planting, managing the trees, conserving our forests, not destroying the wetlands. Please do not degrade our wetlands. They play a very vital role. So the youth, you have a very big role to play, because within this, the value chain, for example, when it comes to tree planting, you can be involved in raising of nurseries, to seedlings in nurseries, and some money. You can be employed in those different areas. I'm talking of the youth who are not in school, but also you can do the same. So the youth can contribute in all aspects when it comes to environmental protection. And also it is creating a number of green jobs across the value chain. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner. I will straight go away to the questions. The students asked a number of questions, and some of them I think have already left. But there are almost 3 similar questions and one that is different. One is really talking about, I think, this Crescent, who is, and I think, Herbert, where you think to know that you have heard, and some people are saying the flooding in Kasese and the flooding of River Nyamwamba is due to the melting of snow. Okay? And one of you asks that sometimes even the flooding happens at night where there is no heat that would melt the snow. So what is really causing the flooding on River Nyamwamba? That was the question. Well, a lot of reports and people think or have been writing that the flooding is due to the melting of snow. While the snow may be melting, there is no evidence that actually it is the water from the snow that is causing the flooding. The modeling studies have shown that the water that comes from the snowbanks contributes very, very, very limited water to the main rivers. Okay? However, also from the recent research that we have seen, because that's what we used also to think like that. And what we try to do is to install different rain gauges around Kasese and these rivers. But every time, like one of you has asked, wherever it would be flooding, people would not be seeing rain around Nyamwamba. Okay? Dry the last 3 days, but they see the flooding. And we realized there could be a lot of rain in the mountain that is not monitored, that we don't record, that we don't know. Okay? Unfortunately, the rainforestation that had been managed by UA in the mountain got vandalized 10 years ago, and it was not recording. Recently, the ministry has installed a radar system with the Queensland, a bit in the mountain. And what we have realized is that most times when it's raining, there is in the mountain sometimes extraordinary rain that we don't see down. Before the last May flood, the last year, we realized that before it flooded, 3 days before, there was 3 days consecutive rain, and these rain events were 5 times higher than the normal average rainfall. So there seems to happen or be extraordinary rains in the mountain that is not monitored, that is not recorded. Okay? That's one. But 2, for the first flood of 2013 in Kasese, Largely, it was due to the bushfires that had happened in the mountain, but also the landscape has changed. The land use practice that we have altered and made the soils very fragile. There is a lot of runoff. There is no infiltration, because if you look at the mountain, most of the crops are annual crops, and when it rains, all the soils end up into the river. I've tried to move along all the rivers, Nyamwamba, Nyamgasani, Lamia, and Kirumia, especially after the 2019 flood events, when they all flooded at the same time. And what I realized in the mountain, before these rivers flood, normally we get landslides that block the rivers and create what we call artificial lakes or dams. So the landslides happen and the river banks, they block the rivers, create some artificial dams or lakes, and then later these lakes or these rivers burst at once with the force, and they start carrying boulders and collecting more soils along the river. And because these river banks are already cultivated, they go on causing what we call river bank collapses. Rivers start collapsing, river bank starts collapsing, creating more silt and building more soils and blockages. And then by the time these waters reach the settlements, they have already gathered enough force and with a lot of boulders and force. So largely, we have rainfall in the mountain that develops over time, and then you have regular blockages of the rivers by the landslides, and then that create dams, and then along the way, you have rivers cultivated, the strips of cultivated, causing a lot of siltation in the rivers and creating that force. That's the major cause. And then one other person asked, how can the communities be involved? What can be done? The commissioner has already mentioned a lot of things, but what we are doing now is that we have had disaster management committees at district levels, especially in Kasese. Some plans have been developed. In one of the projects that was launched recently that I'm managing, we have a plan with work partners to train communities, especially in Nyamgasani, where also Mzee Bidodo is. I've worked with him for a long time, to train them and build their capacity to develop their local or community-based disaster management plans. And because I've been in the region for long and doing research and getting the critics from the people who could normally tell me, you come do your research, you publish papers, you go. We don't see any benefit. You don't come back. This time when I was writing this proposal, I convinced my colleagues that we include some budget for the communities. So this time for the 5 years we're going to work, when they develop their plans, we have earmarked a small budget for each of the villages that will develop the plans to implement part of the plan. We give them their budget, they implement part of, then we are going to attach students, mass students on this to monitor and see how they manage, and eventually what will be the results. Now, if this model works very well, then we can convince government and say this is the best way to go. So that's what we are going to do with Mzee Bidodo and the other people with these community groups. So they can be involved in that way, develop their plans as communities and try to implement them as they come. 2, get involved in understanding the dynamics and necessities of these hazards. The more they get involved, the more they understand the risk, and the more they understand and learn how to identify early warning signs. For the last, since 2017, I've been working with the communities where we identified local people, trained them on how to identify hazards and report them using smartphone. And over time, we have realized in these communities where we have people involved in reporting and understanding these hazards, they are more informed. They can identify landslide triggers and early warning signs, cracks and rest, and they can be on alert over time. We have also realized they tend to get involved in the conservation practices because they are learning over time. This is what we need to do. Citizen science approach and involvement in understanding these hazards. Right now, Commissioner, I have already a network of 60 geobservers. I call them geobservers, but they are citizens, local people who are reporting hazards and getting involved using smartphone. Okay? So this is when they get involved to understand, and once they know and they get to understand, they will better be involved in solving these challenges, because these local people are better positioned to solve these challenges. They have lived with them and they understand better on how to deal with them. So we need to empower them and support them to be involved more. The last question was saying, what are the core subjects for learners to acquire environmental studies? Subjects. The first ones are the usual suspects, the science subjects: biology, chemistry, agriculture, most essentials, then geography for environmental science. Previously it wasn't, but we added it recently. Geography, biology, chemistry, agriculture, and then you have those others. These are essentials. If you have two of those, you have the essentials. But there are then the other relevant subjects like physics, mathematics, English. Those are very good, especially at O level. You need to have passed English and mathematics. At least for most of now the university programs, you need to have passed English and mathematics at O level. Then in A level, if you have biology, chemistry, agriculture, geography, at least 2 of those, and maybe some of the others, physics, mathematics, you very well qualify. Okay? So please do those combinations. And I want again to repeat as I end, head teachers, help us. For me, I'm telling Commissioner, students are coming with weird combinations. A student has Uganda, has biology, and then has Swahili as a combination. Then students finish A level, you get parents calling you, my son has finished, try to get him a place. Most of these parents don't understand these combinations. You look at the subjects the student has done, is not qualifying for any program at the university. Because at least every degree will want 2 principles which are relevant. But you realize in the combination of a student, there is no way you can get 2 essential because all the subjects are disconnected. Private schools, please help us with these students. And you students, when you are choosing your subject combinations, seek guidance and be sure that after A level, these combinations at least can earn you a program in the university. Otherwise, you will struggle for your 2 years and fail to be admitted in the university. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sekajugo. Finally, Gloria, give us your very quick final response.
Thank you very much. Well, most of the questions that were directed to me have been answered. One was about the subjects, and I'm glad Doctor has just talked about that. Then the other question talks about polluter pays principle as a pivotal principle in environmental law. To what extent have the perpetrators of this principle been held here in Uganda, especially the investors? Well, as Commissioner told us, that the different investors, before they carry out any project, there are certain assessments, environmental assessments that are done. However much we really want to protect our environment, but we can never forget the concept of sustainable development, because ideally these have to move hand in hand. But still, as young people, we still have a role to play. Let us be whistleblowers. Let us ensure where we have seen the wrong. If you have seen that they have exceeded where they are supposed to be, for example, they are dumping their waste in the wetland, raise up. Good enough right now, we have the technology. You can do a video, put it on Twitter, advocate for your village. Advocate for your space. You say, so and so this company is doing this. I know with that, our stakeholders will be informed and they will be able to carry out the rightful measures. Then the other thing, how can the youth who are still in high school join you and become active participants? Well, it's a process, but the process starts with you. You have to have the passion, because ideally, the Gloria who's speaking here, the passion started at a tender age. We have been having clubs in school, the geographic club, the wildlife club, within that, there are different innovations you come up with. For instance, we saw that girls and boys were here doing some entertainment. Can we this time be so intentional? Do what we call edutainment, entertainment that at the same time educates. We can craft different skits in line with climate education and be able to put it up there in the different spaces. Just know you'll be recognized. And I really want to thank the commissioner, that we are lucky the commissioner in Uganda. She runs an open office. I, for one, have been able to participate in COP29 in Azerbaijan, but they want to work with people who are doing something. We reached out to their office. We were able to be given an accreditation because we had a motion. We had a vision. We had what we are advocating for. Thank you very much. We are really grateful. May God keep you or increase you. Then the other thing I want to talk about, as young people, it is very important. One of the speakers said that we need to stand on shoulders of giants. Who is your role model? Once you have the role model, you are able to move in their steps. I, for one, am glad to speak on this panel. My role model is here. Thank you very much. I met Doctor at university. He was in that same university 10 years ago, but he has been able to mentor me. So I don't know how best you're going to do this, but can you be able to have role models? And because we are here, the different people have been talking about John Ntambirweki. He has been a role model. Look for a role model. And I really want to thank the VC for giving us a platform, for ensuring that information is being spread. Thank you very much, the foundation, Accord, and each and everyone who has been part and partial of organizing this event. We are so glad as young people. We look forward to you, and we are requesting you, please have open hands, receive us, because we are willing to learn. We are willing to move the talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gloria. I want to thank my panelists. Thank you very, very, very much for a job well done. You can feel free to walk back to your original seats. Let everyone who is here see the people who have talked the things. As they walk back, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Once again, before I invite the next speaker, I just want to take note of the media houses that have been here. Thank you very much. We pray that you will carefully package nation, and we beg that as you are invited, please let whatever you have collected today be aired to the rest of the world. Life FM, VOT, Voice of Toro, Jubilee FM, Fort TV, UBC TV, KRC FM, Mountains of the Moon University Radio, MMU Radio, Hit Under Radio Network, URN. Thank you for being here. Mr. Albert Ahebwa, speaker for Fort Portal Tourism City. I was informed you were here. I hope you're still here. Thank you. And Mr. Katelega Regan, the head teacher of Fort Portal Secondary School. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end. We have two more speakers before we sign off. The Honorable Alex Runda will speak to us, the maestro of this city. Will speak to us, and then we request that after he has spoken, the John Ntambirweki Foundation and family will give a vote of thanks. And we will call this an end to the second annual John Ntambirweki Foundation Memorial Lecture. Thank you very much. Thank you. Then after the Ntambirweki family has spoken, Mr. DJ, we will have the sign-off with the national anthem. My name is Dennis Thomas Lukaya. I work with Mbara University, and I am proud to be part of the support system at UPU. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. I now request Honorable Hunda to
thank you. Thank you. I think he's one of the best moderators. Can give him a hand clap. I know he could not thank himself. I know that we are short of time, but we also have our landlord, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of Toro Kingdom. You, Madam, come and say hello to the audience. So we are comfortable here in your premises. They have looked after us, the UPU family, very well. So, hello. Please come and say hello to everybody here.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry I came late, but we had a function at Toro Kingdom Supreme Council where we are receiving a new Prime Minister of Toro Kingdom and confirming the rest. And I came back as the deputy for the work well done, and of course starting building the university premises. We appreciate that. And of course, just let us stand for just 1 minute to remember Professor Ntambirweki. As a kingdom, we lost a big man. May his soul rest in peace. Professor was a very good friend, was a parent, mentor to many of our children, the children of Toro Kingdom. And of course, we'll never forget Professor Ntambirweki. We always respect. And of course, Akiki Ntambirweki, you know our love for your family. And thank you very much for that relationship. Professor Ntambirweki's family and UP University, you are very good friends to the King of Toro, and he loves you. I know tomorrow is a graduation ceremony. I wish all the graduates a best day, and of course, you should be proud of your university, and when you are up there, out there, please always remember UPU, because it has been a backbone for your future life and what have you. Of course, education is key. Education is power. Education is everything to improve somebody's life. And I thank you, UPU, for educating our children. And with that, I thank you very much. Long live UPU University, long live the King. Thank you very much.
Wally, you can see how we have a very beautiful Prime Minister and who loves education. She's the icon of the Toro women. The subject matter, of course, which has been given justice here, the young lady talked about being passionate, and I think that is what we need from this tent. You have to develop passion and love for life. You know, if you love life, then you must, you can't love life without nature. So the moment you love life, then nature is automatic. And you don't need to be educated about that, because we are connected to nature. And I am one of those who passionately love nature. I have a working example because I have even an artificial lake, Lake Ruhunda, here in the middle of Fort Portal City, so I am proud about that. So the environmentalists, you are invited to Lake Ruhunda. You can come and see to God's creation. And that is very, very important. So we appreciate, first, the foundation has done a fantastic job. You have increased the value of this lecture. So please, whoever is in charge of the Ntambirweki Foundation, I want to appreciate you for the good job done. Thank you very much. For the presenters, our panelists, you've done justice to the subject matter. Actually, I didn't know, Doctor, this gentleman from the mountains of the Moon University, yes, Sekajugo, I don't know why we have not interfaced, because I keep at MMU. But now with what you have delivered here, we need you to interface with the communities much more, because the whole objective is to see these universities moving from your doors and the lecture rooms to the community to offer solutions. So all the researches must be tailored to solutions. You know, I have always been telling many people, I don't like being in a vulnerable position. I must use my head, because that's what God gave us, the brain, to fix. So many meetings which I attend in Uganda and some parts of Africa, they just talk about problems, but they are not fixing. So I think and fix. So that's why we have this brain. Those other Europeans, now you have seen the Trump crazy decisions he has made to the world. He's just in his own right and his own people who love him. But it is us who have to manage obligation and responsibility. So I have told many of the people that you the youth especially, you have to take care of your lives. Now imagine a life on ARVs. You have become reckless with your little precious life. Now you have to become a patient for the rest of your life. And even where now they are saying drugs might not be available. Can you imagine that? So this is really something which you should manage and control. It is your life. So no, not your parents' life, it is yours. So you must learn how to love yourself, develop principles around yourself, and then you become an asset for the nation. Like you see this tent, the assets. Now for you, we are looking at your road journey. Role model, that is what the 25-year, when she said 25-year, I heard you saying, no, because you are looking at the size. But you could hear her voice is really young when she's speaking. So you have to get role models. I have really picked in a short time I'm here some really good quality information. And Commissioner, she knows because I'm on the Environment Committee in Parliament, and we always interface on these issues. We've been in the COP, we want to see bigger things and commitments from the world and not just giving us piecemeal information. But this university is going to really create the practical change in our population here. And I am very proud because it is building the campus at my ancestral home. Now the transformation is starting from my ancestral home, and I am very proud about that. So you cannot digress me from UPU. And of course, the late professor, we were very great friends. I loved him, and he loved me, and I still give my commitment. It's unfortunate that many political leaders, they should have been here, these local leaders, because this is a lecture. I think what we need is to simplify. Because when you talk about public lecture, you know, you intimidate some people. So we may have to find a way how to customize, to make it customer friendly, such that we attract the local participants. Otherwise, they might think this is for academicians, and that's why people distance themselves. So we shall, for your information, we'll say public lecture. Then for the other local, we shall call it a conference, and then they will turn up. So I think let us find an innovative way of attracting the local participation. Yes, we are ready for tomorrow, because tomorrow is excited. For me, I love my
to thank, and I'll start with our MP, speaker who just spoke. Mr. Alex Ruhunda, who serves with me as well on the board of UPU. Thank you so much for coming. Our permanent secretary to the United Nations was here, Adonia Ayabare. The Deputy Prime Minister of the Kingdom, thank you so much. The Vice Chair of the board, Arthur, as well as other board members present, Auntie Irene. I get confused sometimes. She's my auntie. We serve on the board together. It's interesting. Chairman of the Council, Dr. Karema, thank you, as well as the rest of the Council members. Our keynote speaker, Professor Mbote, thank you so much for flying all the way from Nairobi. The Commissioner from the Ministry, Mrs. Mwebesa, thank you, as well as Dr. John Sekwajubo, thank you. Our Vice Chancellor, thank you so much. I know you've had quite a number of sleepless nights. Actually, I didn't see her. I came on Tuesday and I saw her today. Can you imagine? Thank you so much for all the hard work and for pulling this all together. The rest of the panelists who spoke as well, thank you for all the insights that were shared. I think on a personal note, I would say I'm standing here in like 3 different hats. One on behalf of the foundation, second from a family perspective, and third from the board, as I mentioned earlier. And I couldn't think of a more befitting tribute to Mzee, as we all used to talk about the environment. I think a lot has been said about that. He is the reason why a lot of environmental laws across Africa, not only in Uganda, are the way they are. And that's exemplary. That's the kind of legacy that will last forever. So having a lecture around this topic in honor of him, I couldn't think of a better way to highlight his impact than that. To everyone else, thank you so much for coming here today, for traveling, and I will not hold you here any longer. Enjoy the evening, but again, as Honorable said, don't forget tomorrow is a long day as well.
Thank you very much. Madam Vice Chancellor, we need you to give us a nod. I think we are done here, unless you think otherwise. Very good. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We now stand up for the anthem.